In this module, we will be learning more about transition probabilities that we had briefly introduced before, and what is the transition dipole moment, one of the most important aspects of spectroscopy, and this will lead to selection rules about which we will give a brief overview. We will begin by giving you the learning outcomes of this chapter, and then the introduction, what is the transition moment integral, and then an overview of selection rules followed by a summary. You should be able to understand the basis of selection rules in spectroscopy, why a particular transition is allowed and another one forbidden, and you can get an idea about how these can be deduced. The intensity of a transition is proportional to the difference in the populations of the initial and final levels. The transition probability is given by Einstein's coefficient of induced absorption and emission, and to the energy density of the incident radiation. We have already learned that, but now we go into the quantitative aspects of this, and the Einstein coefficients, we will learn about them in some detail, how we can determine them and how they can help us understand spectra. Now, detailed algebra involving time dependent perturbation theory that we will not go into allows us to derive a theoretical expression for the Einstein coefficient of induced absorption. The manner in which you express it is governed by the units in which you express the radiation density. In this equation, it is expressed in Hertz. You can see that the Einstein coefficient of induced absorption, Bij, is proportional to the quantity Mij is a new quantity that has been introduced in this expression, and this is one of the most important quantities in spectroscopy. It is called the transition moment integral. It has the same units as dipole moment, that is Coulomb multiplied by meter. Apparently, if this quantity is 0 for a particular transition, the transition probability will be 0, because the transition probability is proportional to the square of this quantity. So, if this is 0, this transition cannot take place, or in other words, we can also say that the transition is forbidden. This forms the basis of the selection rules for transitions. Selection rules tell us the possible transitions among quantum levels due to absorption or emission of electromagnetic radiation. Incident electromagnetic radiation presents an oscillating electric field. We have already seen that it is the electric field of the radiation that causes the transitions, and the instantaneous value is equal to E naught, the amplitude, the electric field amplitude, multiplied by cos omega t, and this is fluctuating because of the cos factor, and it interacts with the transition dipole. The dipole moment vector is, as you know, the dipole moment is a vector quantity, and given a symbol mu, it is equal to E, the electronic charge, multiplied by r, where r is a vector pointing in a direction of space. It is the distance between the positive and a negative charge. The dipole moment of two given states is given by, suppose you want to determine the dipole moment of the ith state, then MII will be given by this particular integral from minus infinity to plus infinity, that is over all space. The wave function of psi I, its complex conjugate, the dipole moment operator, and multiplied by the wave function, and integration over all space. And suppose it is the jth state, in that case it is given by mjj, and this is, here you have to substitute psi j star and psi j in terms of psi I star and psi I. So that if you want to interpret the symbol Mij, here in one case you write down psi j star, the complex conjugate of the jth state, and psi I. That means it is the transition dipole moment for a transition from the j state, I state to the j state, and signifies a transient dipolar polarization created by an interaction of electromagnetic radiation with a molecule. So, what I am trying to say is that if you want to determine the dipole moment of a particular state, you have to substitute the wave functions of that state in this expression. If you want the dipole moment of another state, again you have to substitute those values, but if you substitute in one case the wave function of the excited state and the other case the wave function of the ground state, it is the dipole moment that is varying during the transition. It is that that instantaneous value of the dipole moment when the transition is taking place between the ground state and the excited state. So this is an important quantity. If this is equal to 0, then the transition has no probability. That means it is not an allowed transition. In other words, we also say it is a forbidden transition. So this governs the selection rules of transitions. As you see, this Mij vector is a triple integral. It involves the complex conjugate of the excited state wave function, the dipole moment operator. It is like any other quantum mechanical operator, but it is the dipole moment operator where you have a charge multiplied by the position vector and the wave function of the ground state. Though the quantum mechanical solution of wave functions for the ground and excited states is complicated. In quantum mechanics, you must have studied that you cannot determine the exact wave function for the ground and excited states of anything except single electron systems, and that is why it is very complicated. But in spite of that, we are able to govern the selection rules from the symmetry properties of the wave functions. So let us see how symmetry helps us in determining this. This is a triple integral. Under what conditions of symmetry does it become equal to 0? Or you cannot govern when it is non-zero, but at least you can say when it is 0. We also know from mathematics that suppose I give you a function fx, and when you replace x by minus x, the function changes its sign. From positive it becomes negative or vice versa. We call it an odd function. And if a function does not change sign when you replace x by minus x, then we call it an even function. Example of an odd function: x plus 3x cube, 2x cube plus 3x5 plus 5x raised to the power of 7. When you replace x by minus x, the entire function also changes sign, because if you replace x by minus x, it becomes minus x minus 3x cube instead of x plus 3x cube. So the sign of fx has become minus sign of f minus x, and this is an odd function. You may note that all powers of x in such expressions are odd. In both the expressions you have x raised to the power of 1, 3, 5, 7, but never to the power of 2, 4, 6, and such functions are odd functions, and we say that f minus x is equal to minus of fx. And on the other hand, you have functions where you have all even powers of x, such as x square or 2x4 plus x raised to the power of 6. Such a function is called an even function, and because it does not reverse sign when you replace x by minus x. You can also have a function which is a mixture. For example, 2x raised to the power of 4 plus x raised to the power of 5, where you have a mix of even function and an odd function. These are neither even nor odd, and they do not have any symmetry properties, because when you replace x by minus x, this will become 2x raised to the power of 4 minus x raised to the power of 5, which has no relation to the original function. Now this figure shows a plot of y is equal to x square, which is an even function, and the integral, suppose you want to integrate it from a limit minus a to plus a, what is integral? It is the area under the curve. You find that you could easily have integrated between minus a and 0 or 0 to a and just multiply by 2, because on both sides you have the same kind of function. This means that it is just twice the integral between the limits 0 and a. And now look at an odd function y is equal to x cube, and if you try to do the same thing, you find that you can determine the integral between 0 and a. This is positive because this is in the positive quadrant of y, and from minus a to 0 it is below the x axis, so the area is negative, and when you add up the two areas you get 0. So when you are integrating an odd function, then you have condition that what will happen is that the total integral between a limit minus a to plus a will be equal to 0. But if it is an even function, it is the area under the curve is twice the area under the curve for an integral between 0 and a. So if we apply this reasoning to the transition moment integral, if we find that the triple product that we were talking about, it is an odd function, it will vanish on integration, because we've seen that the the positive part of the area is cancelled by the negative part of the area, and the transition will be forbidden. And if it is even, the transition may be allowed. I've used the word may. It may be forbidden due to some other reason, but symmetry does not forbid this transition. That is all we can say. Wave functions that do not change sign on reflection. What is reflection? That you replace the r vector by minus r. They are said to be of even parity. We've introduced another word, parity. They are said to be of even parity, and those that change sign are of odd parity. The dipole moment operator transforms as r, because we've seen that mu is equal to ER, and E is a scalar quantity. So the vector transforms as r, and E is the electronic charge. It is of odd parity because r, when you change to minus r, it changes sign. Now, if you want the transition moment integral to be an even function, it means that the product of the remaining two should be odd, because we know odd into odd is equal to even. We already have one function which is odd, so the other two should have a product which is odd, so that finally you have odd into odd is equal to even. Now, when do you get an odd function? When you multiply an odd function by an even function, and this allows us to say that one of psi I and psi j should be odd and the other one should be even. That means a transition will not take place between two odd states or two even states. It has to take place between an odd state and an even state, or an even state and an odd state. This is just the basis for the Laporte selection rule, which states that the wave function should change its parity during a transition. So this is due to the fact that r is of odd parity, and that is why the wave function should change its parity. You can also state this rule as G, a transition from a G state to U state, or from U to G is allowed, but G to G and U to U are not allowed. Now you understand this notation from group theory, and it comes from the German word gerade. G means gerade, and wave functions of even parity are gerade or G functions, and those which are ungerade are given a symbol U, and this is they have odd parity in the case of molecules that have centers of symmetry. You can only talk about this notation if the molecule has a center of symmetry, as you might have learned from group theory, that only those point groups where there is a center of symmetry have G states and U states. So an immediate application of this rule is in atomic spectroscopy. Now we want to learn how a simple knowledge of symmetry can allow us to predict whether a transition is forbidden. I'll not say allowed, but whether it is forbidden. And this is a very interesting example. If you look at atomic spectroscopy, then transitions are taking place between s orbitals, p orbitals, d orbitals, and f orbitals. We'll only go up till the d orbitals, and you find that the s orbitals, they are spherically symmetrical. So any point, and you reflect that point through the center of symmetry, the sign doesn't change. So these s orbitals are of even parity, or they are called G functions. Similarly, the p orbitals, you know, they are dumbbell shaped and they have a positive lobe and a negative lobe. The shaded portion is a negative lobe, and if you take a point above and reflect it, and where the sign changes, so it is of odd parity. But the d orbitals, if you look at the d orbitals, you find that the shaded portion, when you reflect a point from there through the center of symmetry to another point, it will again go to the shaded portion, and similarly with the unshaded portion. And this is the dz square orbital also, which also has the same property. So you find that s and d orbitals, they have even parity, p orbitals have odd parity, and f orbitals also, if you look at them, they will also have odd parity. So this is what we have found, that the parity also depends upon which wave function you are talking about. So what can we say about this? That a transition between two s orbitals is not allowed, A transition between two orbitals, d orbitals, is also not allowed. A transition between s to d orbitals is not allowed because they have the same parity, but a transition between s and p orbitals may be possible because now the parity has changed from even to odd. Now, these are allowed transitions by electric dipole selection rules. This argument does not tell you that s to f transitions, why they are forbidden, because I just said that s orbitals are of even parity, f are of odd parity. So, according to what we have seen, so s to f transitions may be possible, but because of reasons other than symmetry. If you actually evaluate the transition moment integral, we find that s to f transitions are not allowed. In fact, transitions are only allowed when the L quantum number changes by 1. That means s to p orbitals transitions will be allowed, as we had just seen, but s to f will not be allowed, although parity rule allows this. So that is why I had given this example, so that you have to guard against this pitfall. If symmetry allows a transition, it does not automatically mean that this transition is allowed. Reason that S to F transition is not allowed is again simple to understand. We talk about another rule, which is the conservation of angular momentum. That means when the radiation strikes the matter, the angular momentum, if there is a change, if there is a gain of angular momentum of one, there should be a loss of angular momentum in the other one. If it is radiation consists of photons. Now, photons have an angular momentum of 1 unit. That means if a photon is absorbed, it can cause an increase in the angular momentum of the atom by 1 unit, or if it is emitted, it can decrease by 1. And the angular momentum, the orbital angular momentum of an atom, is governed by the L selection rule, and that is why we have this familiar selection rule that delta L can increase by 1 or decrease by 1, or in the language of selection rules, I can say delta L is equal to plus or minus 1. So, an s electron can be promoted to a p orbital and nowhere else. It cannot go to a d orbital because of symmetry. It cannot go to the f orbital because of other reasons, conservation of orbital angular momentum. Now, you see that every kind of spectroscopy has two parts to it. You have a gross selection rule and you have a specific selection rule. The gross selection rule tells us the requirements for an atom or molecule to display a particular spectrum, and the specific selection rule states the changes in quantum numbers accompanying the transitions. The gross selection rule is often easy to predict based on the requirements for effective interaction with electromagnetic field. So, here we were talking about specific selection rule, delta L is equal to plus minus 1. In rotational spectroscopy, we will come across a selection rule which simply tells you whether a transition will be allowed or not based on the properties of the molecule, whether it has a dipole moment or not. So, in rotational spectroscopy, a molecule must have a transition dipole moment that is in resonance with the electromagnetic field for rotational spectroscopy to be used. So, there should be something in some property of the molecule that allows the electromagnetic radiation to cause the transition. So, for a transition dipole moment to be induced in the molecule during the transition. So, polar molecules have a dipole moment, and we say that these are microwave active. Only molecules which have a dipole moment will show microwave spectroscopy, because if the molecule does not have a dipole moment, it cannot interact with the electromagnetic radiation. So, they will exhibit rotational spectra only if they are polar. As the molecule rotates, what will happen? The positive end of the molecule and the negative end of the molecule are constantly moving during the rotation, and that is why the dipole moment is also moving as a sine function. It increases, decreases, and so on, goes through a maximum, decreases, and then if the frequency of this rotation or the frequency of change of the dipole moment matches the frequency of the microwave radiation, because microwave radiation will have the same frequency as that of the rotating molecule, then transition takes place. But if the molecule does not have a dipole moment, there is no fluctuation in the dipole moment because there was none to begin with, and that is why there will be no rotational transition, or the molecule will be microwave inactive. So that means if you have a heteronuclear diatomic molecule like HCl, I'm concentrating on diatomic molecules for the moment. If you have molecules like HCl, HF, carbon monoxide, any one which has two different atoms, it is heteronuclear, that molecule has a dipole moment, and when it is rotating, this dipole moment will also change with the and the transition will be induced. But if it is a homonuclear diatomic molecule, examples are hydrogen molecule, nitrogen, fluorine, chlorine, any one molecule where the two atoms are the same, it does not have any dipole moment and it is microwave inactive. Now that means molecules which have a spherical shape, that is tetrahedral molecules like SiH4, these are also microwave inactive because they are spherically shaped. You know, tetrahedral molecules have spherical shape. When such a molecule, such as SiH4, it undergoes fast rotation, the centrifugal force will cause the molecule to get distorted, and because of that a dipole moment may be induced, and you will find that at high resolution such a molecule be microwave active, although the intensity of the transition will be very small. So if you distort the spherical molecule into elliptical kind of shape, then it may show microwave spectroscopy, because now a dipole, all the four SiH bonds are not equal, and that is why a small dipole moment is induced. We've also seen that the intensity of any kind of spectroscopy transition is dependent on the square of the transition dipole moment. In this case, it is simply the dipole moment, and so molecules which are highly polar like HCl, which has a positive end hydrogen and a negative end chlorine, they will show very strong absorptions in the microwave. Now coming to the uses of microwave spectroscopy, microwave ovens you are all using nowadays, these operate on the rotational excitation of water molecules in food. So if you have some dry food, you find that microwave ovens will not be able to cook them. And if you are carrying out a reaction, molecules like benzene, if these are the solvent, again transitions will not, no reaction will take place because microwave energy will not be absorbed. Water is a very polar molecule, as you know, and it can absorb microwave radiation. So what happens that when it absorbs microwave radiation, it starts rotating faster. Now when it rotates fast, heat is generated and this cooks your food. Similarly, radar systems which were being used by the military and so on, they also use microwave radiation because very little loss of signal will occur in transmission through the atmosphere, because as you know, the atmosphere contains which molecules? Mainly nitrogen, which is microwave inactive, oxygen, which is also microwave inactive. Next molecule is carbon dioxide, and you know that it also does not have any dipole moment, so that is also microwave inactive. Now we come to vibrational spectroscopy. Here the cross selection rule is different, because what happens during a vibration, if you have two atoms, then they are constantly increasing the distance between them and decreasing the distance between them, and if there is a change in the dipole moment during a vibration, then that vibration is infrared active. This is the Gauss selection rule. Now that means homonuclear diatomic molecules do not have a dipole moment, and when you increase or decrease the bonds, they still do not have any dipole moment. So that is why they are infrared inactive. This is the term that we use, that they are infrared inactive, meaning that they cannot absorb infrared radiation. But heteronuclear diatomic molecules, again HCl, HF, carbon monoxide, they are all IR active. But in the case of molecules which have a dipole moment, have no dipole moment like carbon dioxide, some of its vibrations may also be infrared active, because some of these vibrations may distort the molecule, and so it gains a dipole moment. Carbon dioxide has three modes of vibration. One is the symmetric stretch, in which the carbon and oxygen bonds, both of them are increasing in length and decreasing in length in phase. That means that the molecule first elongates and then it decreases in size and so on. The CO bond, either both the CO bonds are decreasing in size or both the CO bonds are increasing in size. In either case, at both the extremes, there is no dipole moment. They look like carbon dioxide, normal carbon dioxide, and so they do not have any dipole moment, and such transitions are infrared inactive. The other mode of vibration is a doubly degenerate mode, which is called the bending mode. In this mode, the carbon and oxygen atoms move in opposite direction, and so that the molecule becomes bent in shape. Since this can happen in plane or it can happen outside the plane, perpendicular to the plane of the molecule, there are two such modes of vibration for carbon dioxide, and both of them require the same energy, so we say they are degenerate. And finally, we have another mode of vibration in which one bond is elongating while the other one is compressing, so that a dipole moment is induced in the molecule because it loses its symmetry during the transition. Now you see, in both in the symmetric stretch molecule mode of the molecule, there is no change in the dipole moment. Because the dipole moment was 0, it remains 0. There is no change in the symmetry of the molecule, it remains symmetric. But in the other two modes of vibration, there is a change in the symmetry. The molecule is no longer symmetrical, and once it loses its symmetry, it gains a dipole moment. This means that these two vibrations will be infrared active. So you find that even a molecule which does not have any dipole moment may show some bands which are infrared active. So out of the three different kinds of vibrations that can take place, that is symmetric stretch, bending and asymmetric stretch, the symmetric stretch is infrared inactive, but the other two modes, that is the bending mode and the asymmetric stretch mode, these are infrared active. And without deriving the selection rule, we have been able to learn a little bit about the activity of these vibrations of carbon dioxide. We will also learn about another kind of spectroscopy which is called Raman spectroscopy, and in this spectroscopy the selection rules are different from those in infrared and rotational spectroscopy. You will also observe vibrations in Raman spectroscopy, and in the case of Raman spectroscopy, it is based on the scattering of light. The mechanism of interaction with the electromagnetic radiation is different in this case, and electric field that of the radiation, it induces a dipole moment in the molecule, and this induced dipole moment is what causes Raman scattering. Now, what is the property that is responsible for vibration or rotation to be Raman active is the polarizability, because how much dipole moment is induced depends upon the polarizability, how easy it is to distort the molecule, and this is why the important property here is that there should be a change in polarizability, and this measures the extent to which the electron distribution of a molecule can be disturbed by an electric field, how easy it is to distort the molecule. So in this case, it is not necessary that the molecule has a dipole moment for it to be Raman active. Homonuclear diatomic molecules like hydrogen, nitrogen, etc., we found they are neither microwave active nor are they IR active, but they show Raman activity because it does not matter that it does not have a dipole moment, and dipole moment can be induced by the radiation due to the polarizability of the molecule when it interacts with the electric field. So these molecules for which we could not determine the bond lengths, etc., in microwave spectroscopy or the bond strengths in infrared spectroscopy, because they were inactive in infrared and in microwave, they also display rotational Raman spectra because they have anisotropic polarizabilities, that is, they are not symmetrical polarizabilities. It is easier to induce a dipole moment along the bond axis. See, all the three directions are not similar now. You can induce a dipole moment along the bond axis because the electron pair is along the bond axis, and when you apply an electric field, then the electron pair will move towards the positive end, and that means that it is more polarizable along the bond axis, and perpendicular to this it is difficult for the electric field to induce a dipole moment. So the shape of the polarizability ellipsoid, which gives the amount of polarizability in different directions, that changes during a vibration or a rotation, and that is why these molecules can show rotational spectroscopy. But spherically symmetrical molecules like methane, they are rotationally Raman inactive because all directions are similar here. So here what we are seeing is how easy it is to induce a dipole moment, and how that means, in other words, what is the polarizability of the molecule. If it is the same in all directions, then it is Raman inactive for rotational spectroscopy. But if it is anisotropic, that means one direction has larger polarizability than the other direction. In that case, you can observe rotational Raman spectroscopy as in diatomic molecules, whether they are homonuclear or heteronuclear. So these homonuclear diatomic molecules will also show vibrational Raman spectroscopy. Now look at the symmetric stretch vibration of carbon dioxide. You found that it was not infrared active, but it is Raman active because the polarizability increases when the molecule is stretched. When the molecule is stretched, the bond becomes weak, and that means it is easier to distort the electron density in the molecule now, and that is why there will be Raman bands will be observed. And when you compress it, the bond becomes very strong. It is now very difficult to move the electron pair, and that is why it becomes less polarizable when it is compressed. So because of this change in the polarizability, the Raman spectroscopy gives rise to vibrational spectroscopy, which is observed in the Raman for diatomic molecules, whether they are symmetrical or heteronuclear. Then another kind of spectroscopy that we will be dealing with is electronic spectroscopy. For homonuclear diatomic molecules, there are certain selection rules that can be easily deduced. We have already talked about the Laporte selection rule for atoms, but it equally applies to molecules which have a center of symmetry. So the parity of the wave function must change during a transition. Also, if the Hamiltonian system, if it is spin independent, the system cannot change its spin angular moment during a transition. So we have another selection rule. The Hamiltonian of this system, if it does not depend upon the spin, that means you have a separate set of spin selection rules. This means that the spin angular momentum cannot be changed during a transition, and that means that the change in the spin delta S should be equal to 0. There should be no change in the spin quantum number. But it must be emphasized that these rules apply to electric dipole transitions only. We have said that most transitions that we will be talking about are electric dipole transitions because interaction with the magnetic field is very, very weak. But it is there. So in some cases where an electric dipole transition is forbidden, you may find that the magnetic dipole transition may be induced. But we will ignore this in this particular module. There can also be quadrupole transitions, which also we will ignore. We will only talk about the electric field transitions or the electric dipole transitions. So we will not even talk about the quadrupole transitions, which are higher order transitions. Now there are certain transitions in electronic spectroscopy which we know are forbidden, the n to pi star transitions. And how do we know that these are forbidden? Usually the n electrons are in the plane of the planar molecule, whereas the pi electrons are perpendicular to the plane of the molecule and have a node, that is a plane where the wave function is 0 in the plane of the molecule. So obviously there can't be any interaction between the n and pi electrons, and that is why these selection rules forbid such transitions. But we do observe them, but they are of very low intensity. And another mechanism operates, that is, we have already seen electronic transitions are accompanied by vibrational transitions. Sometimes the coupling of the vibrational and the electronic transitions, and you have a very interesting term, vibronic, vibrational plus electronic coupling. This may cause the transition to take place, Suppose there is a vibration which is making the molecule non-planar. Some of the atoms are moving out of plane. This can induce an interaction with the n and the pi star electrons, and this transition becomes allowed. But usually these transitions, which are forbidden by the electric dipole selection rules, even if they are observed, they have low intensities. You can recognize them by the low intensity. The spin selection rule is the most difficult to very tough selection rule, but it is also violated, and this we will see is when there is a lot of spin and orbit coupling, and this causes the transitions to take place, although they are forbidden. So finally, we will summarize what all we have learned. We have learned that the probability of a transition is proportional to the square of the transition dipole moment. So it is the single most important quantity when studying spectroscopy. It is the transient dipole moment. Transient means just momentary dipole moment induced in the molecule while a transition is taking place. So mathematically it involves an integral of a triple product of the excited state wave function, or rather its complex conjugate if it is imaginary, the dipole moment operator, and the ground state wave function. Though it is a very difficult quantity to evaluate because we need the wave functions of both the ground and the excited states, it is enough to know the symmetry properties of the three quantities in the triple product, and you can predict the selection rules. Transitions between levels of the same symmetry are Laporte forbidden.